Just first, a statement. These days are never easy. It's very human times in a very public way. Had a conversation with the coach this morning. It was short, cordial. He's a gentleman, a true gentleman. I then had a conversation with Steve Wilkes and named him interim coach and had that conversation. And with that, I'll take questions.
We'll start with Darren. Dave, you talked before about wanting to build a long-term sustainable winner. Ultimately, why did you choose to make this decision today as opposed to at any point previously like this offseason?
Look, there's numerous reasons why you make a decision like that. Ultimately, I felt this was a time. Now was a time.
Let's go to Joe. Dave, Matt has expressed at various times, as you have, trying to find the quarterback, trying to find the franchise quarterback. It appears that search is still ongoing. How much of that responsibility do you bear?
Look, ultimately, I'm the head of the organization, and ultimately, I always bear responsibility. I'm not the person that makes those decisions. I'm brought into those decisions. Listen, we will find, and we may have that person right now, but I believe we will have that person eventually.
Going forward, to find the next head coach, assuming that you'll lead that, will Scott be part of that? Will Drummond be part of that? What will that process look like?
Listen, we're far away from that right now. Right now, we have a lot of season left. I'd rather talk about the season left. Right now, Steve Wilkes is a coach.
So Will Palacios.
Mr. Tepper, speaking of this season, what does the rest of this season look like as an evaluation period for Steve, and do you see him as a candidate potentially for the big job next season?
There's a lot of season left, and we'll see how the season goes. Ultimately, he's in a position to be in consideration for that position. I had a talk with Steve. No promises were made, but obviously, if he does an incredible job, he has to be in consideration for that.
Scott?
Dave, how much did what happened yesterday matter to you in terms of your timing, the fire Matt Rhule chance, the fact that there were so many 49ers fans here, and the 22-point loss?
Listen, as I said, there's numerous reasons why you make a decision. There might have been a little bit of loss of intensity on the field yesterday. I would say that's probably evident versus the first 4 games. Listen, I have great respect for the fans, and I do hear the fans. But ultimately, that can't be a reason why you make a change like this. But again, there's numerous reasons why you make a change like this.
Dave.
And Dave, back in, I think, end of April, you said this could take 5, maybe 6 years to get turned around. What's happened in between there to make you feel like that Matt couldn't be the guy to turn it around?
Look, again, a lot of different, a lot of time has, passed here. We have the record we have. And, again, there's different reasons that go into that. I think that there has been progress of some sort, but look, we're just not getting over the hump. And we got to get over the hump.
With Steve Wilkes specifically, why was he named interim head coach?
Look, it's good to have somebody internally that's familiar with the team and, with the people in the building, so to speak. Steve is a leader of men. He has experience as a head coach. And I thought he's the best candidate, in the building for that role.
We'll go to Phil Orban.
What's your message to fans? You mentioned the fans. Do you have a message for them who may feel like this thing maybe wasn't moving in the right direction?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Do you have a message to the fans who maybe felt the franchise wasn't moving in the right direction after this move?
Look, football's is a funny, funny business. Things take time, and as a former fan, I don't want to hear that. I want to answer. I want to win today, and I don't care about anything else. And I understand that, and I want to win too. But I do think we have made some progress, and we will make future progress. I think it's pretty reported out there that defense has some respect for the defense. It's probably a top half of the league defense or better. I think the offensive line is probably the best offensive line we've had since I've been here. Can get better, but I think that's probably fair to say. So I do think those are kind of foundation pieces. I think we have a lot further to go, and I think eventually we'll get over the hump.
What insight do you have on the firing of Phil Snow?
Tomorrow, I think you'll have a chance to talk to Steve Wilks. I did talk to Steve before, that. He told me, he was going to think about these, few different positions, and that's all that's been reported out there. You should talk to Steve Wilks tomorrow.
Given the state of the roster and the upcoming strength of schedule, what are your realistic expectations when it comes to Steve Wilks? You expect him to get your team over the hump with this remaining season left?
Look, I think we always have an expectation to win and trying to find a way to win. And, that's never changing. Steve is familiar with the team. I have confidence in him, and we'll see.
We're going to go to Steve Reed, and then we'll go to Brett.
Dave, how hard of a decision was this for you? I mean, you've been in Pittsburgh, you've seen that they've had a lot of patience with head coaches, and one of the things that you preach was, being patient, taking time to develop. How hard did that make this decision, being that he was only here a little over 2 years?
I think, it's a funny thing, that thing called patience. If you ask the average fan out there, they think I was ridiculously patient on both these situations here. I think you have to show the right amount of patience and see the progress that's made. Are we winning more? Are we progressing in different ways? And I think in all those situations you just spoke of, there has been that. And I think, unfortunately, we haven't, like I said, got over that hump to win. And I think that's what it is.
Dave, could you address the vast amount of empty seats that have been there the last few weeks, maybe half full? And just to clarify, are you saying it was Steve Wilks that decided to fire Phil Snow and not you guys?
Just listen, it's an interesting thing you say that, but because we have 63,000 people butts in seats. Now, unfortunately, there was too many red butts in seats this week. That was not, again, the reason, a reason for that. As I said, we just can't get over the hump.
And was it Wilks that decided to let Phil Snow go? Was it Wilks that decided to let Phil Snow go, or was that you and Fitterer? How did that come about?
That was basically usually a head coach gets to choose his coaching staff. Okay, and I was informed that he might want to make these changes, and I wanted to give him some time to think about it. He thought about them, he did it, so you should talk to him tomorrow again.
We'll go to Mike Kay, and we'll go again.
Majority of a GM's job is done during the off season. What direction do you want Scott to take as you focus on the rest of this season?
Look, we have to be very careful about how we use our limited resources. We have 200 plus million salary cap. We have how many draft choices we have. So we, including me, to the extent I'm involved at all, have to be more diligent in how we do that.
That said, given where the team is right now, is there a thought process to maybe get ahead of next year and make some moves?
Listen, we're always thinking about what moves should be made, and at this point in time, it's a little premature to answer that question.
I think we talked to you in the offseason. You had the full support of Matt in the offseason, understandably, at that time. What did you see in him at that point that did not happen in the regular season that you thought that he could get the job done to give him another year?
I thought there's flexibility in the staff and trying to upgrade the coaching staff at that point in time and having that sort of flexibility to see how that all worked out. Again, I think there's been some improvements. There's always some improvements, but not enough. And we're obviously not getting over the hump. So, that's the bottom line.
And then, real quick, he had a final say, I believe, in quite a bit of the roster. Will that philosophy for you change going forward? Will you not give that to the head coach, or is that something you believe in?
I think a balance is probably more appropriate between the head coach and the GM, a better balance.
Let's go to Vashti and Augusta, please.
Hi. You've mentioned the phrase getting over the hump several times. What does that look like to you?
And it's winning. Winning.
Can you quantify that as far as the number of wins? Is it a Super Bowl appearance? Is it going to the playoffs?
Winning more this year than you did last year. Having the appearance of winning more than you did last year. Looking like you're going to win more than you did last year. By that definition, I don't think we're over the hump. We started off 1-4 this year. We, had 5 wins the last 2 seasons. We, had a different lack of success in other seasons. So we have to somehow change that culture, see how we can change that culture and try to win. And whatever that takes, we're going to try to find that.
Dave, 2 questions. One, is your plan currently to move forward with Scott as GM into 2023? And 2, do you think there's something advantageous about having a GM and a head coach both come in at the same time together?
It's a little bit premature to ask those questions. Scott is our GM. There's no thought of mine right now. Right now, my focus is Wilkes and helping him have success in the new role.
Let's go Ellis.
Dave, you hired Matt Rhule about 33 months ago. What have you learned about building a winning and sustainable product in that time period from then to now?
Listen, I think that I think that as an organization we have to maintain patience in roster building and different positions, and just a little bit more patience would be good. And remembering all the time that we are in a limited resource business. We have the same amount of money to spend as the next team. Nobody has more, nobody has less. We have the same amount of draft picks as the next team. Nobody has more, nobody has less. We have to make sure we use that as best we can, and really, really consider that and strategically think about it.
Joe and then Nick.
How do you kind of reconcile the patience message, though, when you see other teams around the league having success earlier with newish coaches and getting to the playoffs?
It's funny, I get asked, you just asked that question of being too patient, and somebody said you're not patient enough, and I said it's like you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. And that's kind of, where I am. You have to show enough patience to see how things work out, and then ultimately, are you winning enough? I mean, that's the bottom line here is the bottom line. Fortunately or unfortunately, that's the way it is. Fans care about you winning. And quite frankly, that's why we're all here. We're not in here to do anything but try to win games. And if we're not winning games, is there something else that matters? And look, I mean, you have to be patient enough to see what develops and how it develops, to give things enough time. And that was, you're saying, did you give it too much time? Other person just asked, did you give it enough time? Yeah, I think it's a balancing act, and I try to, balance it both ways.
Would you do a 7-year contract again?
I don't really want to talk about contracts, one way or another. But listen, it's probably in a lot of things in this game, it probably might make more sense to be more conforming in some ways. On the other hand, look, it's about taking chances and taking risks sometimes in life. Sometimes things work out. Sometimes you learn from those risks. So if you don't take chances, don't take risks, you don't win, usually. Okay? So I'm not gonna any individual risk we take on the field, depending if it's smart risk and not smart risk. So, and you learn. So, look, I mean, just in general, and I'll say this is, 4 years in this business, 2 years during COVID. I'm still learning, quite frankly. We had dinner with some owner. Their family's been in the business for 40 years. Okay, I'm going to be humble enough to say that it's a big difference from being in a seat of a fan or being up here, and you're trying to balance. You just gave the question about patience both ways. You try to balance that and try to learn from your mistakes, and hopefully we're smart enough to do that.
Do you think that Matt's transition from college, where he had success, to pro had anything to do with his struggles to win? And would you consider a college coach to be your next head coach still?
Look, again, it's premature to answer that question. I'd like to see what Steve Wilks does, just quite frankly. I'm not going to generally rule that out. On the other hand, there is a history of successful coaches in the NFL. You can go look it up. Every fan can go look it up and see what it is. I'm aware of what that is, and I have to be cognizant and pay attention to that.
Let's go, Darren. Dave, you mentioned your expectations for the rest of this season. If the season ended right now, this team would pick first overall in next year's draft, and that's where quarterbacks are taken. How do you balance the present versus the future in terms of what you want to see from this team?
I'm trying to understand your question exactly.
Is it more important to win now or be in position to draft a quarterback high in next year's draft?
Okay, if that's your question. Listen, there's no way that every day you can't go in with a winning attitude. And there's no other way to be. You have to try to win all the time. You have to try to win for the players. You have to try to win for the fans. And yes, I understand what it is, about draft picks and getting quarterbacks and stuff like that. And I understand the importance of quarterbacks in this league. But you have to try to win always.
Let's go Phil and Will.
I got you. Dave, what'd you learn from the last coaching search that you could take into this one? You mentioned education and kind of learning as you go.
Look, I think that there's some things different we would do in the process in general, as far as consultants and such like that in that search. But again, it's premature to ask that question. So,
In terms of interaction with the players, did you have any, or was there any type of, counseling from either the players' leadership group or anything like that?
In what regard?
With this move being made?
Not really.
All right, let's do this. Let's go Steve, David, and Ellis.
Dave, obviously there's a trade deadline coming up. I guess my question to you is, do you feel like this team needs to be rebuilt? I mean, would it be possible? Do you feel like you guys need to maybe, try to trade some of the veteran guys, get in draft picks, and build for the future? Do you feel like this thing needs to be rebuilt, or do you feel like you're just still a few pieces away?
I think that we have to figure out how to get a culture of winning here, okay, which we haven't had in a long time in this place. And as I said at some point, we never have won. This team has never had 2 winning seasons. So I don't really think it ever had a real culture of winning. So how do you develop that culture of winning, between players, coaches, and the rest? And look, like I said, you have to understand the resources you have and try to get the best resources you have. So that's a question. I'm looking over the roster you have right now, trying to figure out how you can have the best roster in the future. You know the areas of strength. Some areas of weaknesses. There are a lot of good areas of strength on this roster right now. And I think that they're better than they were a few years ago, but we have to put it together, and we have to, hate to repeat myself again, have to get over the hump. And have to figure out how to learn how to win all the time.
You said when you bought this team, though, you had to change the culture, and now in 3 years, you've had 2 different head coaches you've had to fire in season, and then beyond that, a soccer coach you've had to fire. So what is the culture right now of your organization and your group as a whole?
Look, I think that we have a pretty good culture in some respects in the building. I think we have to be confident in ourselves. I think we have to realize we have a lot of good players on this roster. a lot of good players that we can win with, and they have to have confidence in themselves to know that they can do that. And it's accountability. Listen, I'm accountable. I'm accountable to the fans. Everybody's accountable. You guys are accountable in your own jobs. The players are accountable on the field for their positions. Everybody has to be held accountable and realize there's no place to hide. Okay? There's no place to hide in this sport. Everybody knows what's going on. Everybody sees how everybody's playing, and everybody has to know that and play to their best, their best of their ability. And we have to just, do better of instilling that and instilling to winning. We'll get there.
Mr. Tepper, since you took over, this team has had 4 head coaches, one you inherited, 2 interims now, 2 general managers, one you inherited, 3 team presidents, $800 million practice facility that sits dormant. I am wondering, what is the reason for the turnover and lack of follow-through that has been shown under your ownership?
Can you be more specific about what you're asking? Because you asked a lot of questions there.
So I listed 4 head coaches, 2 general managers.
Okay, you're talking about you're asking about the head coach, and I addressed that, the head coach and the interim head coaches, okay? And then your next question is what?
There's been 3 team presidents, 2 general managers, and an $800 million practice facility that sits dormant. I am wondering what is the reason or the largest cause for the turnover in leadership positions and the lack of follow-through in terms of Rock Hill?
I think that as I just went through the coaches before. I think as far as presidents, there's been different various reasons that we've moved on from different people, and that's respect. And in this organization, just as an aside, away from football, in this 4 years, 2 COVID years, we brought in, besides football, we brought in a soccer team that is setting records, okay, and bringing 34,000 and revitalizing the city. We brought music back, not back to Charlotte. There never was music in Charlotte, with concerts. We reopened restaurants because of what we've done here. So if you look at what's really been done on the field by this organization, there's been no lack of progress in these 4 years, 2 COVID years. Okay, so you want to look at the results? Okay, it's a results-oriented business. We've won, and we've won. The place we're not, we'll do better on the football field, in the future.
We have time for 2 more. I'm going to go to Brett and Scott.
Dave, can you talk about the conversation you had with Steve, about when he went to high school here, went to college here? Was he overly excited? Was he tepid? What was his reaction when you had that conversation with him?
Listen, Steve loves this area, loves Charlotte. So if you're somebody who loves this area, loves Charlotte, of course you're going to be a little bit excited. Obviously a question for Steve, though. So you should ask Steve the question tomorrow.
Finish with Scott.
Dave, this is just a timeline question, but did you wake up this morning and decide to do this? Did you know last night? I just wonder what your own decision process was here.
Scott, I read your column, okay? You know better, okay? Every day, this is an everyday thinking about things, how we can be better, what should we do, when is the right time, when's not the right time. And I said there's numerous factors that go into it. I answered that question before. There's a tipping point that gets reached. It just so happened we got to the tipping point. And I think you understand that,
But you're saying you're not very specific on what the reasons were other than you didn't win. I mean, was there something I'm missing other than that he's 11 and 27?
You want me to read? I could actually, I shouldn't say that, but I actually read your columns, and I can go back to your columns and regurgitate them. So you can read your own columns, okay, for that answer.
Thank you. Thank you, Dave. Appreciate it.
Thank you.